Hi, welcome to your free acting class for Monday, November the 8th for myfreeactingclass.com. My name is Michael Bean. I've been a professional film and TV acting teacher for almost 20 years, and I started running these classes in March or early April, actually, I think, of 2020. And here we are back after a brief hiatus for the summer and early fall. Today, we're going to be looking at a self-tape for our self-tape review and talking about framing, and then we'll just see what questions folks have. Now, there is an option for folks from this acting class to work on actual scenes. One of the things that I've been thinking about over the last couple of months is that I want this acting class to be an opportunity for people to work as close to what the kind of work that would be happening in a sort of a quote unquote real professional acting class. So if you are watching this video and you are interested in working on a scene for next week, then email me info@myfreeactingclass.com and just give me the age range and drama or comedy, and I will send you a short script, just a couple of pages. And what I would love is if you would do a self-tape of that script, send it to info@myfreeactingclass.com, and then next week in class, we'll have a chance to workshop with some of those scenes. So I'll review the tapes in class and talk about them. And then that week or a subsequent week, if you want to bring in that same scene, we'll have a chance to workshop it a little bit for everybody. So that's something that we weren't able to do in as much detail when the class was only half an hour. And now that we're only running once a week, obviously there's a lot of things that I want to cover, but one of them is genuine scene work. So please join us. Now, let me show you the website for those of you who are not immediately familiar. This is myfreeactingclass.com. This is where if you go here, click here, the Zoom link is going to show up every week. And I've put the Zoom link for today's class, and I'll update that with the Zoom link for next Monday's class. You can just go to myfreeactingclass.com. You can also check out our video archive. If you click that link, it'll take you here. You can scroll down and see a bunch of these videos. And you can also follow this link right up here, youtube.com/MichaelBean, that's my name, to see all of the past videos. There are almost 200 videos on there now, including interviews with multiple casting directors and a whole host of other useful technical things. So that's where you would find all of that. Now, we had a self-tape submission over the break, so we're going to start with that. This is from a woman named Selena Green. Selena, thank you so much for being brave and sending us your video. And I want to use it to talk quickly about some of the technical aspects of film and TV. Now, for anybody who doesn't have context, the industry has shifted very strongly to what are called self-tapes. So it used to be that a professional film and TV actor would expect to have their whole schedule, sort of thrown out of whack in less than 48 hours. The expectation was that as a professional actor, you were always available to go into an audition. Auditions would take maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10, but you would get 48 hours notice top. So you had to constantly be available to shift your schedule. And you also had to live somewhere close enough to wherever your sort of urban center. Here in British Columbia, which is where I am, that's Vancouver. In LA, obviously would be Los Angeles. There are sort of hubs where those auditions happen. The industry during COVID shifted to self-tapes, and it's stayed pretty much that way. Now, I spoke to a casting director named Kara Eady. I talked to her over the summer when I was running workshops in a casting studio as things were starting to open up a little bit. And she said that they did a side-by-side comparison of her and Chris Waz, who's her casting partner. You can see Chris's interview if you look at last spring's casting director reviews. I think if you even just look at decision makers, if you go to the video archive, Chris Waz right there near the top. So fantastic interview. It's really worth looking at. But the two of them said they did a side-by-side comparison of self-tapes versus in-person auditions that they were running in the casting studio, and that the quality of the tapes was identical, that they couldn't really tell the difference between them. So definitely there are some actors who prefer to audition in person. There's some actors who prefer to audition at home, but that's like a piece of the decision making or for folks. But I think in general, what casting is finding is that self-tapes are just as good as in-person auditions for the first round, and it lets them see more people. So we can expect that self-tapes are going to be the norm for the foreseeable future. So if you are not already set up to do a self-tape at home, it does not require fancy equipment. I could record right now using this laptop that is pointed at my face. I have a large ring light, so an LED ring light. I'm not going to plug any particular brand because really I just got the first one that was available on Amazon and it works just fine. LEDs are pretty bomb-proof. I recommend getting one that you can turn up and down that's dimmable. But aside from that, you don't even get one used on Craigslist. And if you need to, just take a big lamp and point it directly at your face, because the important thing is to have light reflected in your eyeballs. Otherwise, you're going to look dead inside. So that's called an eye light. Then there's eye line, imaginary line between your eyes and what you're looking at. Right now, I'm looking right at camera because I want it to look like I'm looking right at you at home for a film and TV audition. Typically, you would have your eye line just to one side or just to the other side of the camera. Not so far off that we lost your face or even lost part of this eye, but very close to camera on just one side or just the other, but never directly at the lens, because you don't want people to think that you're looking right at them when they're watching. So that's eye light, eye line. This is the frame, which is what the camera sees, and we're going to be talking a bunch about frame today. And the background, you basically just need a neutral wall. Now, I used to set up a fancy blue screen, and my agent, when I was sending auditions, said, I really just like the tan wall a lot better. And so this is what is happening from almost all of the self-tapes they're seeing, is that somebody is using a neutral wall. Now, hey, if you've already splurged for the fancy blue black backdrop, go for it. You're not hurting yourself on that. I'm just saying that is not an expense that needs to happen, especially when you're thinking about what your tape is going to be compared to. It's important that the camera be at approximately eye level. If I was down here, you would see even more of my prodigious forehead. And if I was up here and you were shooting up on me, then it would look like I have a double chin, right? Because of the shadow coming down from the lighting that is just slightly above. And so make sure that the camera is at eye level. So another thing to be thinking about. And those are pretty much your basic issues. Now, one of the things that most folks are doing is they're taping with their phones. If you do that, make sure that it is horizontal, not vertical. If this is like just important, super key. If you're going to tape horizontal. And today I'm going to talk about framing and show you how to crop in a video a little bit. So let's look at Selena's video, and then I want to talk a little bit about that, go into some technical things, and then talk a little bit about the work that's happening there. And again, Selena, thank you so much for being brave and submitting your video for us to look at. So here we go.
And you got this envelope how?
No idea. It was waiting for me in my box this morning.
So why should I take this seriously?
My job is to help rehabilitate people like Lisa. In every one of our sessions, two people come up more than any other. Her grandmother and her sister.
And?
Her grandmother just died. Don't worry, I checked. It's true. She died a week ago. And according to her letter, her last wish is for Lisa and her sister, her half-sister, to have a private ceremony at their old cabin this weekend. Sir, I'm asking for a quick furlough. I think it could be good for Lisa. I think it would be transformative in terms of rehabilitation. It's not like she's a flight risk. Plus, it would only be a day.
I'd have to send a guard.
Sir, private. No matter what happens this weekend, remember, you are not who your granny said you were. Don't let this cabin win.
Okay, now Selena didn't send the script, so I can't pull up the script and say, here are the things that she's using to make these decisions. But right at the beginning, what we've got is nice neutral background. They see how the plants draw focus, right? So she looks really like clean, crisp, professional. But if I'm looking at this, my eyes drawn to these sort of interesting things up here, and the plants down here, and the purple nail polish, and all of those things, I think, take us away from the acting. And so today, before I even get into talking in detail about the choices that Selena's making and her delivery, I want to talk about framing. So framing is what the camera sees. This is a lesson that I covered early on in the pandemic, and I think that it's time for some review. So frame size, shot types. So what we've got here, and the words that are used for these tend to vary a little bit. Very long shot. So you're seeing the person's whole body, and you're seeing them sort of in the scene. Long shot, you're seeing the entire body of the person. Medium long shot, you're seeing head down to below the waist. Then we move down to, come on, medium shot, head to waist, which is what we're seeing from Selena here, right? So we're seeing her in a medium shot. If we want to go back to the tape, right? We're seeing quite a bit of the background. We're also seeing her in a medium shot. In fact, if we pan down, so we had this. So there was no space over her head. We'd even be sort of seeing down to about her knees probably. Yeah. So back to this, right? Medium close-up. This is where you want to shoot most of your auditions, medium close-up, because the focus ideally is on the acting and on the micro expressions and the subtleties of what's happening. The illusion is if the camera gets up nice and close to you, that it can see everything that you're thinking, and that every little choice comes across to camera, right? Every little thought, every little breath, every little hesitation, every little blink or shift of the eyes. So then the actor, as long as they're filling the scene up with their life, doesn't have to choreograph, like, this is exactly how I'm going to, and then I will move my head here and twitch my eyebrow to the left. Very difficult to choreograph. Medium close-up is also just standard for most film and TV auditions. Now, close-up and big close-up or extreme close-up. This is the horror movie, what, zoom in right on the eyeballs. For commercial audition, for something that requires a lot of movement, you might see a medium long shot or a long shot because they need to see the entire body, but they'll be clear about that when they ask you to do the tape typically. If they do not specify, my advice is to shoot in a medium close-up or just like a smidge wider than a medium close-up, right? So maybe just down to below the armpits if you want a little bit more movement, but that's pretty much how tight you want to go, right? We've also got this, just another way of looking at the same thing. Full shot. Remember I said that the words change a little bit depending on where somebody went to film school or which book they like. The important thing is that this full shot is like we're seeing the whole body, the medium full, medium shot, close up. This here, this medium close up is this kind of space right in between top of the head down to just below the armpits. That's where we want to shoot. So the next thing I want to show you is iMovie. Now, that's only because I'm a Mac user. You can use literally any movie making program. I do not have a fancy one. I just used the free one that came with my computer. So I'm going to pull that up for you. Now, I'm going to pull Selena's tape into here. And I'm going to show you the crop function in iMovie so that we can talk a little bit more about it close up. So crop to fill, right? You can see that right up here, the little universal crop icon, and all I have to do is drag this. And my goal is to get those plants and everything else out of the shot and get into that medium close up if we can. And now we might not be able to get all the plants out of there. No, looks like I can. Excellent. And so then what we're going to try and do is put the focus just purely on Selena. And then, yes, we're not going to see her hands, but we are going to see so much more detail in the face. Now, she sent me a lower resolution video file, which is useful. It's important if you're sending video. There we go, boom. It just means that it's going to be a little bit blurry, but obviously if you're doing this with the original, that would not be the case. Now, if I'm here, I go into export file. Now this is how, typically how I'm asked to label auditions. When I'm labeling them, name, and then the character's name, all in capitals. What I recommend if you're an iMovie user, and somebody who is a Windows Movie Maker user or uses a more sophisticated program, happy to throw it in the chat window if you're like, oh, here's the settings I use. But really the low settings, so 720, low, faster, this will give us a, you see it's a 41.9 megabyte file. So that's small enough to send. You can WeTransfer that, you can upload it. If I make this high, 120.7 megabytes, because it's only a minute, 120 megabytes is still, you can't email it, but you still could send it. But imagine if you had a 5-minute audition tape or a 10-minute audition tape, it would be really necessary to do this. And if we were using the original footage here, you would see that we would not actually lose very much of the resolution, by exporting it low. So I'm going to export that, and then as soon as that is finished doing its thing, then there's a little progress icon right up here. Might be a little bit slow because I'm also talking to you, but when I come back from that, let's see what we've got in the chat window. What is the Ken Burns crop? Thanks for the question, Duke. Ken Burns is a zoom in, right? So it's like it starts here and it ends there, or zoom out, right? So you can make it go, it starts here and goes like zoom, or it starts up and goes and like a slow pan down. Typically, I will only use the Ken Burns on when I am adding my headshot to the start or the end of a tape. So when I do my own audition tapes, I'll put my headshot, Michael Bean, and then I'll do just like a slight Ken Burns, just so that's a little bit more interesting than just like poof, my face. So it's like starts up and goes like and it just moves a little bit. But I mean, I'll only put in 4 or 5 seconds of that at the start of the tape, at the end of the tape. I think bookending with a headshot, really, really normal, and it's a good idea. Now let me see how much time got left on this one, and maybe while that's happening, I'll go through some of the other framing issues that are very, very normal. I'll often see tapes where the head is cut off. I don't recommend it. I think it's important to see as much of it as possible. Now, if you end up cutting off part of your hairstyle, obviously it's not something that I have to worry about. But I do not think that's an issue. I certainly have one client who's 15 and always makes sure that like all of his hair is like perfectly coiffed and on camera. And he might be right that his hair is one of the selling features for him as an actor. It's a very visual industry. You make your own decisions about that. But in general, you want to keep the frame cropped close to the top of the head. The mistake that I see folks make a lot of the time is they'll frame sort of with a whole bunch of space on top of that. They give themselves all this headroom, and then we're losing some of the body Yeah, and also just like getting unnecessary wall. So I would say crop the frame in, they're really close to the top of the head without cutting yourself off. And if you're worried about sort of kicking your marks, you use painter's tape and you can make a mark on the floor. Here's where I'm going to stand so that you can set it each time. Also, because the file size is getting reduced before you're sending it, or at least hopefully you're reducing the file size, not just sending the raw file right from your camera. If you don't know how to reduce that file size, like I said, very easy to do in iMovie, very easy to do in Windows Movie Maker. There also is a free program called Handbrake that I recommend and that I've talked about here. Handbrake video. Right, so this is open source video transcoder, and just pull that up. Right, so if you're like, but I don't have any of these programs and I'm on free computers, etc., right? You don't have to spend money for these things. HTTPS handbrake.fr. Right, so it is completely free, and in some ways is actually more effective at taking the file size down. So it's Handbrake. That video from Selena has finished downloading, and so, or is finished exporting. So let me show you the difference. Right, so you'll see, like I said, that it's blurry because I'm not using the original file. Selena didn't know I was going to do this exercise. Yeah, and so here's a little clip of the original. Right, Selena looks great, right? Like her outfit looks great. Her light, she's got some side lighting here, so she's got this like bright spot on her face. But it looks also like she's using natural lighting. Like she may not have the option, of setting up a whole bunch of lighting. Now, if possible, it would be great for her to sort of rotate her setup so that this window that is over here on the side was facing directly at her. Even if that meant that the background was the wall was at a slight angle, like a neutral wall like that, nobody's going to be able to tell if you're shooting at an angle probably. And so that the light comes straight on the eyes. But you can see like it looks great in the shot. We're trying to get rid of the distracting things and also close in the frame to that medium close up. So what that looks like is this. Now this, if you can just imagine it crisper, so imagine it with the level of detail, you're going to see so much more of what she's doing with her eyes, of what she's doing with her face, and also there's nothing else to draw focus. No matter where my eye starts to roam, it's going to have to come back to her, and it's especially going to come back to the shiny thing, which is her eyeballs, and that's where you want people looking the whole time.
And you got this envelope how?
No idea. It was waiting for me in my box this morning.
So why should I take this seriously?
Now, one of the issues that I didn't get a chance to talk about, or didn't choose to talk about in the setup, but is worth reviewing here, is, oh, I'm sorry about this freeze face, Selena. Maybe I'll just let it go like a second.
I'll just help rehabilitate people like Lisa.
Is that right now the reader, so the person who's reading the other side of the lines, is louder than she is. And that's because it sounds like a male voice to me, is physically closer to, I'm assuming this is a phone, but it might also be a camera. But whatever the device is, he's physically closer to it than she is. And so another good reason to do the medium close-up is that then you can get your recording device up nice and close to the actor. And then whoever's the reader, whoever's reading the opposite side of the lines, either if they have to be right there just beside the device, like let's say it's a situation where the other person has to hold the device. Let's hope you don't do that because you'll get little micro shakes and they're super distracting. Then they would need to keep their voice way down. And normally what I recommend is just that the reader stand further back, like physically make themselves further away from the device so that they don't have to volume control as much. And also possibly take their voice down a little bit. It's a good idea to do a test clip for audio before you record your audition so that you don't get through like an amazing first take and then go like, reader's louder than I am. Basically anything that's going to shift the focus from Selena is something that we want to try and avoid here.
In every one of our sessions, two people come up more than any other: her grandmother and her sister.
And
Her grandmother just died. Don't worry, I checked. It's true. She died a week ago. And according to her letter, her last wish is for Lisa and her sister, her half sister, to have a private ceremony at their old cabin this weekend.
Okay, so look at this. I mean, this is so much more sort of professional looking in terms of the frame, because we're not seeing a partner, we're just seeing this is an actor acting, with the neutral wall in the background. Yeah, and so most of my initial adjustments for something like this, are essentially technical. I think that if it gets framed in and the device gets moved closer and the reader takes their volume down, then the other thing that's going to be able to happen here, or if I was coaching Selena on this, I would ask her to take her volume to a normal speaking volume. Right now, she's projecting slightly. I assume it's either because she's like feeling into the character, and there's that like defensiveness, or the like, I want to protect this person, that she's playing with, and that's sort of coming out more strongly. It's also possible that it's just because the person she's talking to is far enough away that she feels like she has to reach them with her voice. What happens there is that it tends to flatten out the things that she's saying. So I think that Selena's making some interesting choices here, and that volume, she's turned up the volume and that's flattened out some of the modulation. Yeah, and so if she took the volume down and let the camera come to her, then that we might hear more of what's going on, and we might find the work that much more believable. So that's one of the first kind of easy technical adjustments that I would suggest making there. What I will say sometimes to new actors is, imagine that you've got your arm on somebody's shoulder, and you are talking to them right there. Or sometimes in class, especially because I've worked a lot with teenagers, or even younger folks, I'll go like, okay, stand right close to the other person, like uncomfortably close. Yeah. So like both people are kind of like, now say the lines at that distance, right? So hand on the other person's shoulder or even closer. Because when you do that, you automatically adjust for that distance. And that's the distance that typically you want to do for film and TV. Now, from that distance, if you're really heated about something, if you're feeling very passionate about something, is it possible that you will raise your voice and yell at somebody? Of course it is. Of course, that is entirely possible. It's just only going to happen if it's really important in the scene. If this character is really escalated, it's likely to be specific, just a couple of lines. You're not going to do a whole scene right in somebody's face at this volume. And probably because I have a decent microphone, it's doing a decent job of sort of volume correcting for me right now. Yeah, and so hopefully this example just gives you the sense that like you just can't hear the highs and lows of my voice as much because I'm pitching up my volume. And I'm not pitching up my volume that much even. This might just be like the kind of extra volume that somebody might use if they were excited, if I'm talking to somebody who's like 6 or 8 feet away, but I'm not. For film and TV, I'm talking to somebody who is less than a meter away from me, right? Who is just at like, I don't know, half a meter, 0.6, something like that. Who's just a couple of feet away, who's at arm's length. And if you use that volume, then we'll hear more of the modulation. Now from there, there are some things about the scene that I would love to adjust and go into some of the story questions. I'm going to bring the story questions back next week, but I don't want to overwhelm everybody with too much detail. All in one lesson. Today we talked a lot about framing, a lot about technical things. I know that some of that will be review for those of you who have watched a whole bunch of the free acting classes, but I really think it is always worth coming back to. If you make it look and sound like a professional tape, then you are establishing right in the first 2 seconds they watch it, oh, this person knows what they're doing, and you're just taking away any distraction. You're putting their focus where you want it to be, which is on your eyeballs and on your acting choices and what you're doing. Yeah, and so Selena, if you do watch this, and I hope you do, then I would love to bring this tape back and talk to you about the relationship with the person you're talking to and establishing those really strong relationships with the person who you're asking for the furlough, and then with the client who is right there, who I assume you're referring to or talking to at the end, and the objective, what you want them to do or feel. So I'll see if I can actually get that script from Selena, and maybe we'll revisit it next week. So that was everything that I had planned for today. Those of you who made time to come to today's lesson, thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any questions, anything that is on your mind that you want to ask about, that you want me to talk about before we wrap up today's lesson? Let's see, and feel free to throw it in the chat window, or what is your mic? So I am using, and this was referred to me by one of the teachers at my school, who is a voiceover artist. So I'm using an Audio-Technica condenser mic. You definitely don't need to use something that fancy. Now, when I record auditions, I don't actually use this condenser mic. I literally just use the microphone on my phone. I got several external microphones for my phone. I use an iPhone, but I don't really think it matters that much. And I tried each one, and really they just weren't very much better than the onboard microphone, as long as the device was close to me. So I think the important thing there is just to keep the device close to you, which when you're shooting in medium close-up, very easy to do anyway. Right, so if you were like, I don't want to spend very much money, like I've got the phone, but where do I put my very minimal budget? I think you put it into lighting, or you find a blank wall, you put it into lighting, and a ring light, any sort of inexpensive ring light, even or in a pinch, like an LED lamp that you can point at your face. LED, so that it can be dimmable and also like pretty indestructible. But I've also seen some excellent improvised lighting sources. So I would say that, and then just like some kind of simple tripod to hold your phone that you can adjust so it can stay at eye level. And that doesn't have to be something fancy, right? It can be a tripod this big that you put on a stack of storage boxes. Nobody ever sees what's behind the camera. Right back here, it can be chaos. And trust me, right now, totally is. But here, this is all that the camera's going to see, which is a nice blank wall. Quickly, whose name I'm sure I'm totally mispronouncing. Thank you for the question. Do we get the recording? Yes. So I will be posting the recording of this session to the YouTube channel, and I will also be sending it out to I will be sending that link out to the mailing list. So, and if you are on the mailing list, and if you want to sign up for the mailing list, just go to myfreeactingclass.com, and you should get a pop-up that's like, whoosh, sign up for the mailing list. I got feedback from somebody that pop-up wasn't showing up for them. Maybe it's an ad blocker thing. So I'll put a link on the main page so that folks who don't get pop-ups can still find the mailing list. But if you pop on the mailing list, then I will send out a link to like a direct link to the video, and some little tidbits of like what to expect. I've got an actor named Ben Kakel who we looked together at his audition tape. Right? So he showed us his self-tape, the self-tape that got him his first big recurring role on a show called The Mysterious Benedict Society. And that show has now aired. And so Ben agreed to come back, and I'm going to pull the footage as close as possible to the exact scenes from his self-tape so that we can watch both. We can watch, here's the winning self-tape, and then here's what it looked like on set. So you can just see the amount of detail. It's so different. And then he's going to talk to us about the experience of being a recurring character on a TV show and sort of where that's taken him since then. Yeah, and as I find other exciting things to line up for us, I will let you know what we've got. Any final questions? Okay, beautiful. Thank you so much for making the time to join us today. Again, my name is Michael Bean. I'm a professional actor and acting teacher. You can find me at michaelbean.ca. That's information about me and my acting classes. And then at myfreeactingclass.com, you can find the video archive, and you can also find the link to next Monday's lesson. That's Monday, November the 15th, from 5 to 6 p.m. Okay. Thanks, everybody.